Hi, today we're talking about CCM8, Unit 2, Lesson 5, Classifying, Comparing, and Ordering Real Numbers. So let's go through these definitions first. Integers are the set of whole numbers and their opposites. Sometimes I like to say positive or negative whole numbers. Rational numbers, any number that can be written as a fraction, positive or negative. Irrational numbers are any number that cannot be written as a fraction, also known as a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal, such as pi or the square root of any number that's not a perfect square. Real numbers are any rational or irrational number. On the board and on your paper you have a chart. And this kind of visually shows you how all of the numbers are related. So we went over integers, rational, irrational, and real numbers, but let's go over two more kinds of numbers. First of all, let's go over natural numbers. Natural numbers are counting numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. You don't start counting with the number 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That doesn't make sense. So natural numbers are just your counting numbers, does not include 0. Whole numbers include the number 0 and all natural numbers. So this category here, whole, includes 0 and any number that's a natural number. Then we go to integers. Remember we said integers were any positive or negative whole number? So integers are numbers like -1, -2, -3, and so on, plus the whole number 0, plus any natural numbers. So this category, integers, includes all these other categories that are within it. Also, we went over rational numbers, any number that can be written as a fraction. So it could be like 3/4, could be a rational number. Or any of these numbers, integers, whole numbers, and natural numbers, can also be considered rational because you can always put these whole numbers over 1 and it becomes a fraction. So all of these numbers, natural, whole, and integer numbers, are also considered rational. There's a category over here that does not, it's all by itself, it does not include these other numbers that we just talked about. It's called irrational numbers. Any number that cannot be written as a fraction. So, like I said before, pi, the square root of any non-perfect square. So we're going to classify the following numbers down here, and we are going to classify it by every name possible. There's one name I haven't gone over yet. It's called real numbers. All of these numbers that we're talking about today are real numbers. So everything that we're talking about in CCM8 is real. So when we classify these numbers down here, I'm not going to write real because they're all real already. So let's classify the number 0. The number 0 is definitely a whole number, so I'm just going to put W for whole. And what did I say before? It's also it's also an integer. And it's also considered rational. So those are all of the classifications that go with the number 0. What about the number pi? Well, that's a number that we don't really write as a fraction. I know some people will say pi is just 22/7, but that's an approximation. So pi is a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal, which is considered irrational. So I'm going to put IRR for irrational. The square root of 18. Now, you can use your calculator for this. Type in square root of 18, enter, and you'll see that it's just a whole bunch of numbers. There's no specific repeating pattern. In your calculator, it terminates, but in real life, it doesn't. So this is an irrational number as well. It's a square root of something that's not a perfect square. Number 4 is the number 6. 6 is natural. If it's natural, it's also whole. If it's whole, it's also an integer. If it's an integer, it's also rational. So it's going to have all of these N, W, I, and R. Negative 11. Why don't you take a second and pause the video and try these 4 problems out yourself and see what you get. When you're done, just push play and you'll see the answers come on the screen. Did you get these answers? I hope so. Okay, let's go through and let's write these series of numbers in ascending order. So ascending order just means write them from smallest to largest. We notice that we've got some positive numbers, some negative numbers, we've got a square root and a decimal. So that makes it a little bit more challenging, but let's start with the negative numbers first. The bigger the negative, or the more negative it is, the less it's worth. And we've only got one negative number, so that's definitely coming first. Negative 2. Then we have the number 0. That's definitely next. Now we just have to decide what's next, 1.34 or the square root of 5. Well, let's think about this. The square root of 5 is very close to the square root of 4. What's the square root of 4 worth? Its value is 2. So this number, square root of 5, is going to be just a little bit above 2. And 2 is more than 1.34, so we know that 1.34 comes next, and the square root of 5 is coming last. Does that make sense? Why don't you try the next 3 by yourself? I know you can do this. Just push pause on the video, try them, and then when you're done, push play and check the screen. So this is going to be 3. All right, did you get what I got? For number 2, we got negative 1.5, then 3/4, then 3, then 10. That one is pretty easy. Number 3, negative 37 is less than negative 32. If you're looking at a number line, negative 37 would be more towards the left of the number line. And then 0.75 and 2. This last one is a little bit more challenging. I had to think about what the square root of 18 could be if I'm not using a calculator. I know that the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 25 is 5. So this square root of 18 is going to be, I think, more towards the 4 than the 5. The 11/3 in a mixed number would be 3 2/3. So using logic, that's how I put my numbers in order. And lastly, we're going to use a number line to compare and order these fractions. Sometimes it's easier, Vic number 1, when comparing and ordering numbers, use a number line. Sometimes it's easier that way to visualize the numbers and where they fall. So let's put these on our number lines. Negative 0.2. So it's in the negative region. It's not yet 1 whole. It's going to be right around here, really close to 0. This one is positive 7/10. So again, it's going to be in the positive region, not yet equal to 1. So it's going to be about right here. I guess it would help if I wrote the numbers here. And -1, that's obvious. +2, again, really easy, and then -4. So if I wrote these numbers in ascending order, least to greatest, it would start with -4, then -1, then -0.2, then +7/10, then +2. All right, why don't you try this last one by yourself, putting them on the number line. Some numbers you're going to have to use logic and estimation to see where it might fall. So just push pause on your video, and then when you're done, push play to see the answer. So, hopefully you've gotten this far on your number line. I estimated the square root of 15 was a little bit less than 4 because the square root of 16 is 4. And then 9/2 is actually 4 and 1/2. So I went past 4 and maybe about halfway past 4 is 9/2. -3 and 1/4, that was to the right of -1, so it's not exactly -1, it's a little bit to the right. So now we can put these in order: -2, comma, -1, comma, -3/4. And then just remember, when you're writing your answer, use the original form of the number. So the number that came next was the square root of 15, and lastly was 9/2. All right, hopefully you learned something.